Good morning everyone and welcome to our Inspection and Testing Qualification Update webinar. I'm David Pye, Technical Advisor for Building Services. I'm joined by my colleagues Peter Tanner, Senior Consultant, and Salim Vizram, Industry Manager at BSC, and we will be your hosts for today's webinar. Before we start, I'd like to explain a few things about our webinar platform to allow you to get the most out of the experience. All viewers will be in listen-only mode, which should help stop any unnecessary background noise. However, to engage with the webinar, please use the on-screen panel. There will be opportunities to ask questions by using the Question tab on your panel. We expect that our webinar will be extremely popular, but we'll do our best to answer all the questions and queries. During the webinar, we will pause briefly a couple of times to allow delegates to reflect and type questions. Now let's have a look at today's agenda. Okay, so the agenda. Getting the most from the webinar, we've discussed the best way to chat to us as the webinar is ongoing. I will then cover a brief history as to the qualification and introduction of the new Sitting Girls 2391. Colleague Peter Tanner will discuss the structure and the assessment strategy for these new qualifications. We will then cover the next steps and the go live and how to progress with this new qualification should you choose to move to it. We'll conclude with a few slides on some of our support around this and other products, and then hopefully we'll have plenty of time at the end to answer questions. We expect the webinar presentation to last around 45 minutes, depending on the amount of interaction as we're ongoing. We should leave plenty of time at the end for us to answer all of your questions. So, the qualification purpose. What are these inspection and testing qualifications, and how are they related to industry and competence person schemes? Well, as I'm sure many of you already know, having run the current qualifications related to this inspection and testing, is it's for practicing electricians. It can be for electricians who may have qualified some years ago and want some update on inspection testing, and it can also be for members of staff who are working in allied trades, similar qualifications, similar experiences, and want to widen their own experience and skills. These new versions are a direct replacement for our 2394 and our 2395, and they continue to meet the industry CPD needs. These products are also recognised by the GIB under the ECS card scheme. I think some of the comments on this slide will support you if you're looking to promote this qualification at your own centres. So a little bit about the qualification history, just to give us some context as we move into some of the changes. In 1995, the 2391 was first introduced as an NIC EIC required specialist qualification for inspectors to be competent with the IET GM3. Initially, it was just multiple choice. In 1996, we saw some changes to the assessment with some short questions and 6 structured questions. And in 2012, we saw the qualification split into the 2394 and 2395 as industry wanted specific initial verification and periodic qualifications. In 2012, we also saw the introduction of the apprenticeship and the initial verification qualification under the QCF rules were meeting the same requirements as 2394, and it allowed us to certificate learners as part of that apprenticeship. So now in 2017, that qualification is up for its 5-year product review. For every 5 years we will review the product to see that it's still suitable and it still meets the needs of industry. So why? What are the drivers for the change? So number 1, employees and learners need results quickly so they can undertake the role in industry. The current system doesn't allow for immediate results, and the change to the assessment strategy will permit results straight away. Number 2, Time required for any resits required needed to be reduced. So on the current system, if you're waiting for a result, you're not sure if the candidate has been successful or not, there's a time period between allowing for the, excuse me, before you can book a candidate in for a reassessment. Number 3, industry-related products and employers understand the 2391. 2391 is a very strong brand. It's still spoken about in industry. We hear it quite a lot. This was a good opportunity when reviewing the qualification to return to a very recognised number. Number 4, operational costs for paper-based exam systems and marking is high. So the cost involved in producing the paperwork, sending out the paperwork, the assessment being sent back in, consultants and markers to mark those papers can be quite lengthy and costly. Number 5, industry drive to be more responsive and digitally focused, including offline test facility. So the new product will be online, so we can get results straight away. It's digital, and there is an opportunity to download that to a computer and sit the assessments, so you don't need internet connection. Number 6, CPD qualifications need to reflect what the industry competence schemes are accepting. So currently there are qualifications out in the industry being used which have different assessment methods, and they're being accepted by the industry. Number 7, secure evolved platform for tests reducing incidents of malpractice and improving quality. One of the advantages of the evolved system is that it is marked by the computer system and it removes any subjectivity. Number 8, streamlined delivery, reduced repetition and administration for centres. We've looked at the assessment methods and we've tried to consider the needs of the providers and the industry, and we've tried to create a much slicker product for you to deliver. So where are we heading with all these changes? This will be the structure of the new qualifications. We will have a 239150, which will be the level 3 award in initial verification. We'll have a 239151, which will be the level 3 award in periodic inspection and testing. Or alternatively, candidates can take the 239152, which is the level 3 award in inspection and testing. Okay, we're just going to pause now, just for you to reflect a minute on some of those changes. I'll put you on mute just for 2 minutes, and afterwards my colleague Peter Tanner will go into far more detail on how those new qualifications will look. If you've got any questions, please type them in now. We'll make a note of them.
Okay, good morning everybody. Just to follow up with one of the questions that came in. We will follow up this webinar by emailing all attendees a copy of the webinar. So moving on with the presentation. On the slide you saw before we stopped briefly for a reflection session there, you saw the 3 pathways as part of the qualification. So with 2391, you have the 3 options of doing the 239151, and we intend that for the persons who are wanting to do initial verification, probably people on the domestic installer route, those who are coming into industry from other areas, maybe through allied trades. And with the 239151, we see that for persons who perhaps have completed an apprenticeship on the modern apprenticeships, such as 2357 or 5357. And as part of that qualification, they already get recognised for their initial verification. So perhaps once they've got some experience on site, they might want to just top up their knowledge base with the 239151 periodic inspection and testing. But of course, the vast majority of persons who want to do inspection and test obviously want to do both disciplines, both initial verification and periodic. And this was obviously a problem with our 2394 and 2395, because anyone who wished to do that route had to do both qualifications. So we've simplified very much the assessment process, and we see probably the majority of candidates taking that particular pathway. So looking at the detail of each of the 3 pathways, the 239150, the initial verification route. Just a brief overview here. We have one 40-item, 80-minute open book, multiple choice assessment, 2 practical assignment tasks, one being on the main test rig, and one being a short 4-item written question. I'll go into the detail on the next few slides of these. So you can see that when it comes to the multiple choice examination, you can see the test spec there, and it's a 40-item multiple choice. You can see much of the weighting for this examination is based around understanding the requirements for testing electrical installations, initial verification, and probably the big change with this assessment from a sitting bureau's perspective is this is now open book, where you're allowed to take in BS 7671 and the IET on-site guide, as well as guidance note 3 for this assessment. When it comes to the practical part of the assessment, I think some of you will be very glad to see that we're using the current 239495 test rigs, so there'll be no expense in changing test rigs over. We've simply, all we've changed, in fact, when you look at the drawing that you can see on the webinar, is the number 2391 instead of 239495. Other than that, the rigs are exactly the same. So when it comes to the practical assessment, you'll be looking at, for the initial verification, a 2-hour practical full initial verification on the test rig. With the initial verification, we will be requiring assessors to put in 2 faults into the installation. There will be designated faults which are detailed on the assessment documentation. And with those faults, once a candidate has found the fault, which is a likely experience when people are working on site and initially verifying work for the first time, faults can be found. The fault will be cleared, rectified, and the assessment will continue, taking the necessary retests on those circuits where the fault was there. And by doing this, we've taken away the need to have the separate insulation resistance test board and the separate earth fault loop impedance test board, so they're not required anymore for these assessments. So you can use the insulation resistance test board that you currently have, use it for any training purposes you may see fit, but it's not now part of the assessment, same for the earth fault loop impedance. And also, you may be pleased to know that the initial verification boards where you find the 12 faults on the board. They're no longer required as well. Again, they were probably quite heavy when it came to maintenance. So when it comes to the initial verification now and it comes to the visual inspection, we'll be requiring candidates to complete the inspection schedule based on the main test rig, because we feel that it's not so much about finding actual faults on the board, but understanding what are the relevant parts of the inspection schedule, which parts are applicable, which parts are not applicable, rather than actually saying, well, you know, there's a cable there with a bit of insulation missing. So it's more about what's applicable on the inspection schedule and what's not applicable. Also, as part of this practical test, we've introduced a short answer 4-item question paper, and this is to be done additional to the overall 2.5 hours for the assessment. And what we require here is a very short 4 items, but 15 marks per item, and kind of think of it as a logistics tool, because while you have candidates who may be waiting to get onto assessment boards, they can sit and do a bit of that question paper and then go on and do their testing, and then perhaps do a bit more of that question paper later. So it's not to be done under examination conditions, but it is to be done as part of the overall assessment process. And as with 239495, if any candidates are getting close to their time on the assessment, but they still have the documentation to complete, we are allowing additional time for any documentation to be completed. So moving on now to the periodic inspection, the 239151. Once again, as an overview here, we have one 40-item multiple choice test, and then we have the practical assessment as well. So looking at the detail of that, so you can see that from the periodic inspection evolved test, once again it's a 40-item test. Just like all evolved tests, it's on demand, so you can do this anytime you want. You can also do it remotely, because you can download these tests and do them without internet access, which I know a lot of training centres like to do when they're taking them to the customers. Again, you can see with this one, the main bulk of the weighting of the test is on the actual testing itself. When it comes to the practical assessment for this periodic, we have kept the photos as part of this assessment process. I just heard everyone groan at that point, but I'm sorry, but yeah, the photos do remain as part of this assessment. When it comes to the testing of the main rig, just like with the current 2395, we require 2 faults to be introduced into the test rigs for the candidates to find and classify, so put a code on it. We don't require the faults to be rectified. They just have to then perhaps limit the testing around those faults, but report them in the correct way. When it comes to the final pathway, the 239152, we see this as being probably the most popular route. This one now is a 60-item, 2-hour multiple choice test, and again a practical assessment. So looking at the detail, with the evolved test, just like all the others, this again is an open book evolved test, but this time we've got 60 items. And you can see again, there's quite a spread of the weighting here, where we have quite a few more questions on the inspection, because as you're probably aware, when it comes to initial verification and periodic, there are differences, and so when it comes to the combined assessment, it's splitting out those differences. But the bulk of the weighting of the test, again, 33 items, will be on the testing itself. When it comes to the practical assessment, now what we've introduced here is you will once again have the photo assessments for candidates, as well as the 4-item written question paper. But again, the written paper is to be done more as a logistics tool, and we're using it to cover criteria that isn't captured or doesn't naturally fall into a multiple choice test. So we have to bring in just a bit further more questions. Again, use it as a logistics tool to perhaps keep candidates occupied while you're waiting for rigs to become available. And with this assessment, what we're introducing is a scenario where the rig will have 2 new circuits installed, or at least that's what the candidate will be told, but 2 of the circuits are new and will require a full initial verification, and the remaining circuits will be on an existing installation and will require periodic inspection and testing. Faults are to be introduced, some of them just 2 faults, and that should be perhaps 1 on the new circuits and 1 on the old. Again, the detail for that is in the assessor's documentation. So when it comes to this short answer question paper, we're not really moving too far away from some of the examples you may have seen in the 2394 and 2395 written examinations, but a bit more simplified. So you can see just a very quick example of the type of questions you might see on those question papers, depending on what discipline. So again, a question would be very simply, explain why an electrical installation certificate is retained, and the assessor's pack will have all the model answers for each of those questions. So as I mentioned earlier, and just to recap so you can see it in black and white, with the exception of the photo visual inspection task, all the other assessments are open book, including the multiple choice assessments. And with those assessments, you're allowed a copy of BSM 671, IET on-site guide, and guidance note 3. With the practical testing assessments, as before, we do allow other material in those assessments as well. But of course, assessors need to use their judgment, because if a candidate is spending too much time referencing a book in order to carry out the tests, perhaps they're not fully competent in the tasks they're undertaking. So you can see that we've kind of improved our delivery with our improved 2391. You can see now that there's fewer tasks in the practical assessments. As mentioned before, we've removed the visual boards, the insulation resistance and earth fault loop impedance boards. So less to maintain, less to have in the assessment room, because we kind of moved those assessments onto the main rigs. We have that specifically designed combined assessment. Because the qualification is now going back to a joint assessment of both disciplines, that was one of the main drivers for bringing back the 2391 number, the number that everyone knows, and they can associate that to a combined assessment. We have just one practical process with assessing both those skills. And I think you'll all agree that that was one of the biggest probably criticisms that Sitting Girls had with 2394 and 2395, was that the assessments were probably too rigorous where candidates wanted to do both assessments at the same time. And you know, we've come across, we've developed a method of assessing those candidates, but making it much, I won't use the word easier, I'll just use the word slicker for candidates who want to do that. There's no point in over-assessing, and perhaps the older methods were over-assessing. And again, just one online multiple choice assessment on demand, and as mentioned earlier, you can do these either in the centre or remotely, because you don't necessarily need internet access to do evolved tests. So once again, we'll just pause for a couple of minutes just to allow yourselves to think of any questions. And we've had a few come through. We'll just sort through those questions over the next 2 minutes, and we'll come back with lots of response. Thank you.
Hello everyone, thank you very much for that. We've got lots and lots of questions to work through, so we've made a note of some of them. Peter's going to start working through answering them. We've tried to answer some directly as they have come in by typing a response, and there's still some more coming in. So whilst Peter tries to work his way through answering some of the questions, I'll continue clicking through new questions that are coming up. So apologies if there's a bit of background noise as I'm typing away.
Hi everybody, lots and lots of questions to come through from all of you there. Obviously the presentation hasn't completed yet, so there's some answers perhaps to some of those questions as we go through. One of the biggest questions we've got here is, do you see this as a drop in standards? And I think there's a lot of you that know me out there, and I was an advocate for the closed book test, but after a lot of industry reviews, we look at this as more of an appropriate assessment for a CPD qualification. We're just falling in line with industry standards, but we understand there's a need for a gold award or a gold standard, which is why we're introducing a suite of level 4 qualifications, and inspection and testing will form part of that level 4 suite. So when we're looking at that higher level specification for inspection and tests, that will form part of a level 4 package or a standalone CPD qualification. More to come on that. Will 2392 continue? Yes, we see 2392 as a very good stepping stone for inexperienced candidates on the route of the inspection and test. So yes, that very much will continue. What was the time for the written tests? There is no time for those written tests. Those written tests that form part of the practical, they don't fall in that practical time, but they're really the onus is on the assessor. As I mentioned during the presentation, they're there to capture some of the criteria that couldn't be caught by the multiple choice test, but equally it's a logistics tool that the assessor can use to keep a candidate occupied while perhaps they set up one of the assessment rigs. So there is no time limit, but it's at the discretion of the assessor that if a candidate is struggling with some of those questions, perhaps they're not ready for the assessment. So really it's up to centres to administer that, but a reasonable time. The fees has come up as a question. Fees are now available on the walled garden, but Celine will perhaps bring in a little bit to do with that later. Time period for resit, same as any evolved test, but I've got to say, as I always say, you must really make sure the candidate's ready for it. Don't try and rush the candidate in if they're not ready. Think about feedback with the candidate and think about are they ready or do they need further instruction there. Just going through some more, where is it available? That's coming up in a few slides in a minute. Will exams be open book? Yes, all exams are open book. Just again scrolling through some of the questions. I think that pretty much wraps a lot of them up.
Okay. Okay, thanks Peter. But there's still some more questions coming through. What I propose we do is we continue just with the last few slides, and then we'll have another opportunity to answer all of the questions right at the end. Okay, thank you very much. So, next steps and go live. There's been numerous questions around this so far, so this gives us an opportunity to answer many of those. Centres will have automatic approval if they're currently delivering our 2394 and 2395. Registration for these qualifications will end August 2017. The final 2394 and 2395 written dated entry exams, including on demand, will be available up until December 2017. The new 2391 will go live 24th of May 2017. The following new web page has been set up, and we've included a link here, so when we show this presentation following the webinar, you'll all be able to click the link, or you could simply go into our website now and type in 2391 into the search, and it will bring up the full handbook and details of this new qualification. New approvals or if further information is required, please contact your business manager or technical advisor or Michael MacArthur, whose email address is there on the screen. So just the last few slides, just to summarise on what we've been discussing and to show some of the additional support that we have at Sitting Girls. So the first slide there shows the full building services team. So this ensures that you have all our contact details if you wish to get in touch with us, ask any further questions. The final email address there is quite an important one, digital products, which is our digital sales at sittinggirls.com. If there are any of the digital products that you are interested in as a centre, if you send your first initial inquiry to that email, you'll then get a response from the appropriate person. Evolve Analytics is a resource that we have at Sitting Girls that not all centres use. With these qualifications moving to an Evolve type system and assessments, there's a lot of information that centres can use when benchmarking performance in certain areas, which we think will be very valuable to centres providing the new 2391 qualification. If you follow that link there, it will take you to a web page and a short video explaining what Evolve and Centre Analytics can do for the centre. I suspect that people in your exams teams have probably got access to this. Maybe you've spoken to them about it, maybe you haven't. Maybe worth after today's presentation having a conversation internally. E-certificates, currently at no extra cost, a centre can register for e-certificates. One of the advantages of this is you can get the certificate within around 24 hours, 48 hours if you have direct claim status for a qualification. It will then be sent electronically and it will fit quite nicely onto a phone as a PDF and can be shared in industry on site much easier than carrying around a paper version. So a number of the advantages are a quicker response for your achievement and the opportunity to share that award and that certificate out in industry. Larger centres may, or larger employers may also want to register for verifying certificates. If the centre or employer registers for this service, they can simply type in the name and the certificate number and it will verify whether that qualification and that certificate is genuine. Okay, so keeping in touch, one of the things we like to do, certainly more recently, is try to keep everyone as updated as we possibly can. We've shared already our email addresses. We're now doing webinars, as you're aware of, because you're listening to one, and we do regional networks. One of the easiest ways for us to keep a lot of centres updated is through email updates. Now, you may already be registered, but we still go around the centres and there are new staff or staff who move and they're not registered for email updates as they change their emails, etc. So it's just a reminder to register for email updates. And we also have a Twitter page, BSE_CG. We're on LinkedIn, so there's numerous ways that you can contact us. Okay, so thank you very much for your attendance. We will now have a look at a few more of the questions that have come through and then we will respond to those. If you want to have a reflect and a think about what you've been told in this webinar, please start typing your questions in. We're just going to pause it just for a minute so we can type out some of the, have a closer look at some of those questions and then we'll be back very, very shortly to answer.
But just before we do pause, I will answer some of the questions that have been coming through. Firstly, RPL from 239495. Quite simply, no. If a candidate's enrolled on 2394 or 2395, there is still time for them to complete that qualification. If they wish to obtain a 2391, then they have to register entirely new on 2391. So if a candidate is struggling to complete their assessments on 2394 or 2395, perhaps they failed the exam several times, then maybe that's an opportunity for that candidate to receive further training, register on the 2391 and you know, start again is effectively the best way. 2357 and 5357, will they get certification? Well, initially, all the time 2394 is still available. They'll get that as part of the qualification, but that will move over to 2391 when 2394 has finished. We see that change really happening from September onwards. That will be the natural point to change over from 94 to 2391. One other question that came through, it said here, is there any design module in this, like the old 2391 used to have the 2391-20 module? No is the simple answer to that. This is purely inspection and test, because the design module is now 2396, which is the level 4 design qualification. As previously mentioned, we are looking at a level 4 suite of qualifications, 2396 being part of that, and a new 2391 inspection and test level 4 qualification for that gold standard. More news on that later on in the year. Certification, there was a couple of concerns that will certificates be clear? Will employers know what discipline various operatives have if they've just done the initial verification or periodic? Yes, the certificate, although it's the same number, it will be very clear on the certificate what they've been awarded. If it's initial verification only, or periodic inspection, or whether they've done the combined inspection and testing, the full inspection and testing, it will be very clear on the certificates which ones they've done. GLH, that's another one that's come through. I'm afraid I actually haven't got that to hand. I've got lots of other documents I've brought with me today, but not that one. There's only so much you can bring. It is all on the 2391 webpage. So go onto the main City and Guilds website, type in 2391 in the search box. That will bring you onto the 2391 webpage. There's lots of documentation on there, all the handbooks, all the test specs, all the times of all the tests, all in there in the handbook. So lots and lots of further information there. Please take a look. I think quite a lot of questions actually would be answered by a lot of those handbooks.
Yeah, apologies, we've got the screen open on the webinar, so we couldn't open it now or else it would close the webinar down. So we can easily have a look following this, and if we've not answered that or you can't find that information, we can easily find it once the webinar's over.
Okay, another question that's come through. If candidates have passed the practicals for 2394 and 95, can they just take the multiple choice test for 2391? No, sorry, as mentioned before, we're not mixing and matching the two qualifications. If candidates are registered on 2394 or 2395, we suggest that they stay on those assessments. Or if they wish to move over, they would have to do the reassessments, because the practical assessments, although are on the same rig, they are slightly different when it comes to those assessments and the criteria of those assessments. So I know that probably sounds a bit, iffy from some of you probably think, well, that's a bit silly, a bit daft, but it is really, we've got to keep these qualifications separate. So I would suggest, reassessments, because the correct paperwork would need to be completed for the 2391 assessment. Another question's come in for the 2391-52. Do the candidates have to fill in both the EIC and the EICR within that 2.5 hours? Yes is the answer to that question, but obviously some of the assessments have been dropped, so within that 2.5 hours they're not doing the insulation resistance testing board, they're not doing the earth fault loop impedance board. They are initially verifying just 2 circuits, so the EICR, including the schedules, will need to be completed for that, and then the periodic for the board. Please remember that if candidates need more time to complete documentation, they are allowed that. They just can't be testing beyond that 2 hours or that 2.5 hours. Okay, so another question come through. When is the new qualification coming in? As shown on the previous slide, tomorrow is when the new qualification comes in. You can register candidates on it from tomorrow, but obviously there's going to be a tie-over period. So 2394 and 2395 are still available for registrations up until the end of August. So 1st of September, registrations will close on those two qualifications. But examinations can be taken up to December 2017, at which point I'll say it will be turned off. Obviously, we will review it nearer that time, depending on what registrations are still remaining on that qualification. It's always prudent to review these things before we switch off the button on it. But yes, registrations will close for 239495 in August. So hopefully that gives you enough time for your publicity, for your centres to ensure that those you've got coming on to courses are clear that there's now the new 2391 really taking over from September onwards. But it is available for any candidate, any centre to sit from tomorrow onwards, providing you've done the necessary registrations for your centre. Okay, I think we just answered the button at the bottom of the screen question, I hope. No, we haven't, because it's come back on again. Okay, a question regarding the claim numbers has just come in. Once again, all of that information is on the qualification webpage in the handbooks, which are there to open to download on the 2391 webpage, which you can access from the main Sitting Girls website by typing 2391 into the search box, and that will take you straight to the qualification page where the handbooks are in the documents.
Okay, thank you. We've got a few more questions coming in. There's quite a few about concerns from centres over the new qualification and will it be easier than the previous one. Well, we've written these qualifications to meet industry needs and we're setting it at the correct level. So although it's a different assessment approach, we don't envisage it being easier or harder, just an alternative approach which is more accessible. So we say that this is a very appropriate assessment method for a CPD course. What we are doing though is that we are looking at developing a level 4 C course type equivalent, which in a moment Peter will just give you a very brief overview of our approach to that. But the assessment method that we see is more appropriate, that is now available as new qualification, is one that is out there at the moment. It's being run and it's being accepted by the IET and industry and employers. So it's not a new assessment approach out there to industry. Okay, so as I said just before, we are looking to develop a level 4 qualification which will help you stretch and challenge some of those learners who wish to progress within their careers and show that they have a lot of high level skills and abilities to maybe support them with progressing into further jobs within the industry. Peter? Okay,
yeah, just to expand on what David mentioned there, we are planning on, over the next academic year, developing a level 4 suite of qualifications, one unit of which is already developed, which is the 2396 design course. But we anticipate further, perhaps, and it's very much ideas at the moment, 6 modules or six qualifications within this overall level 4 qualification. and we're looking at it as a C-course replacement. C-course industry has been telling us for a long time that C-course is sadly lacking in the industry, that technician qualification was probably not widely used enough towards its latter years, but now industry has realised that there is a hole in knowledge really at that standard. So to meet that need, we are developing this level 4 suite. 2396 design will be part of that suite, and we also anticipate having an inspection and test module on that as well. That will take inspection and testing to a higher level, perhaps a management level, or management of inspection and testing, and looking more at the detail of liaising with customers on extents and limitations and more complex installations, as well as inspection and testing techniques. But for the guys on the ground, this 2391 does meet that industry need. Perhaps the next level is the managing of the inspectors on site. Other areas that we see this new level 4 suite moving into, areas that we're told industry needs, is things like cathodic protection, lightning protection systems, hazardous locations, alarm systems, both intruder and fire alarms, areas such as that. Really, it's C-course, maybe not so heavy on the science, but who knows, that could be, if it's what people want, one of the units required. So we see that once a candidate has taken all of the required level 4 units, we see that as an overall qualification, and they will be awarded an equivalent to what we consider as a C-course, or what C-course used to be. I appreciate C-course was at level 3. I think that was unjust, and it was definitely a level 4 qualification. So, we see that being developed over the next 6 to 8 months.
Okay, there's lots of questions around the presentation. We will make sure that we send out this presentation at least within the next few days to all attendees. Okay, we're just looking through some more of the questions.
Okay, what qualification can we now claim under the 2357 qualification? Well, that still will currently be 2394. So if a candidate has completed successfully the 607 unit and everything, including performance units, then they are able to claim a 2394 certificate. That will still change. That will still remain the same, and then that will, from September onwards, be migrating over to 2391. Currently, it will still be 2394. When it goes to 2391, it will be the 239150, which will be just the initial verification. Okay, the higher level 4 qualification, we've been asked when that will be available. We're looking to develop that, as soon as we possibly can. We would like to think that that will be available, not for the next academic year, but the year after. So we're saying from 2018, it makes sense for us from our point of view, because it's going to be a very technical qualification, and there's no point in having material and assessments out there that we've then got to update for the 18th edition. So we're going to probably look at moving this in line with the introduction of the 18th edition, because the 18th edition is bringing in a lot of new advances in technology with a new Part 8. And of course, that's going to bring in a lot more expertise in energy efficiency design. So again, that's an area we're looking to feather into this new qualification. And it makes a lot of sense, really, to bring that out, as well as, in line with the 18th edition rather than before that. Just while I'm mentioning the 18th edition, please remember that the draft of public consultation will be available later this month. Log on to the IET website under regulations, and you can review the draft for public consultation version of the 18th edition, and the consultation period will be open until the end of August, where you can submit comments and your views on the content of the 18th edition. So please remember to do that. Okay, prerequisites. Have we highlighted any prerequisites before coming on the course? We're not allowed to do that. As the old 2394 and 95 handbook states, the course is suitable for practicing electricians and it's aimed at practicing electricians, but we cannot really put any restrictions on who can join the course, simply because it's up to centres to do a skills scan on the candidates and design a course to study. So if a candidate comes to you with absolutely no experience whatsoever and they want to do inspection and test, I would enrol them on the 5357, which means they do all of the underpinning knowledge to lead up to that. Yeah, so whilst we can't set any criteria, we do leave it for centres to judge the ability of the candidate, whether they're strong enough. Support materials for this qualification. IET will be producing a 2391 exam preparation book, which is joint with City and Guilds, and that will be available from September onwards. It is being produced now, so you will have some practice tests in there. Smart screen work will be developed over the next few months.
Just another question around the passwords for the restricted material, the restricted assessment material. Those passwords are available on the wall garden, but that's only if you run these qualifications currently. If you don't run any of the inspection and testing qualifications at all, you'll have to complete a full qualification approval form. If you are interested in running these qualifications and haven't done so previously, please email Business Manager, myself, or Michael MacArthur, and we'll support with that application. Okay, we're just carrying on through with the questions. Okay, I'm not sure if some of them are coming back up again as we scroll through, but again we've got a question on the GLH. We can't remember off the top of our heads. It is in the handbook, and we're worried about opening up the handbook whilst we're on the screen, in case it closes down the webinar. But if you search for 2391 in our web page, it'll bring up the contents of the qualification. We've got an idea of what it is, but we won't want to guess. We'll try and find out whilst we're on this webinar so we can answer it directly. But as I say, you can easily have a look yourselves if you've got access to the internet. Okay, we've got a question around the passwords again. Centre who've got access to the 23945, but they cannot bring up the 2391. Okay, well what we'll do is we'll make a note of that, and we'll see if there's we need that simply adding, or there's a way we can add it for all centres who are currently running those qualifications. It may mean that you'll have to send an email to your local office requesting the intention to run the 2391, and we will let them know that you can have automatic approval because of the previous qualifications, and that should come on easily. So we will follow that up. Celine, did you have the guided learning hours.
Yeah, the guided learning hours for the combined 2391-52 is 50 guided learning hours.
So from memory, I think the other two qualifications remain at the same as 9495, which I believe was 36 GLH, and of course the combined being more at 50 hours.
Okay, question. Well, last question still form part of the assessment, with them being on open book.
The answer is quite simple. Yes, maths does form part of inspection and testing in order to ensure that results are correct and accurate, and even verifying results against BSM 671 does involve a bit of maths. So yes, there will be some maths related questions as part of the multiple choice assessment, and perhaps the written paper towards the end as well, if practical.
Just to go on around the question around guided learning hours, so the combined periodic and initial verification is 50 guided learning hours. The standalone initial verification is 41 guided learning hours, and the standalone periodic inspection and testing is also 41 guided learning hours.
Okay, another question has come in: are these 2391 qualifications enough to register on the JRB or NIC EIC qualification? The answer is yes with that. We have liaised with the JRB to do the ECS registration. We are working on the EAS committee, so yes is the answer to that, because we are working with the EAS committee. And as far as NIC, EIC, NAPIT and other certificating authorities or bodies, they have been communicated to about these qualifications, and I see no reason why the NIC or equivalent shouldn't accept these, because they are industry recognised qualifications with the JRB and ECS. So, but as always, my proviso on that is that the NIC, NAPIT are private member organisations, and they set their own standards and their own rules. But if they work to the EAS standard, then yes, they will accept them.
Okay, good question. Will the level 4 suite replace existing HPD level 4? Is that the higher professional diploma?
I don't see that it will. This will be a very electrical specific suite of level 4s, very specific to the electrical contracting industry, rather than a generic building services type level 4.
Okay, we think we're coming near the end of the questions. We are going to continue just for a few more minutes trying to answer questions, but to those of you who have enjoyed the webinar, we thank you very, very much for your time. We know you're very, very busy, and we appreciate you logging in and listening to the webinar. If you do have any feedback, there's the feedback email address on the screen. We would really appreciate some feedback from you as centres. But before we finish, we will continue answering some of the few more questions that are just trickling in just before we finish.
Okay, so questions come in. Will the level 4 qualification be a full year course or not a short course? Well, we're looking to do it in modules, and therefore, like 2396, you can do that currently as a short course, CPD type qualification, and the overall qualification will be built up by a number of modules. So really, candidates can dip in, dip out. They can do, if your timetable allows it, they can do the full qualification perhaps within one academic year, or they can do it over a number of years. But it is a case of really they can dip in and dip out to suit them with the different modules.
And this will be based around what industry need, feedback from some of the key industry bodies, feedback from employers. We're also aware of candidates' time in terms of being able to go and take time out from their employment to actually come and take some of these qualifications at colleges and at private training providers as well. So bearing all of that in mind, we will be having a focus group and a steering group around this new level 4 qualification. The feedback over the past 18 months when we have been running a number of these network events is centres and employers really see this as a crucial platform for learners to be able to jump on after they finish level 3 and going on to do a level 4 qualification. So this will certainly fit a gap that we certainly see in the market where industry are requiring a level 4 qualification.
Okay, we've got a question on will guidance be given to aid the change in the slides and the handouts that need to be produced, or we suspect because the content is very similar to what you've been delivering before, there's going to be no major changes in content and delivery. A lot of that will be very similar. So we suspect that side of things, excuse me, in your teaching and learning and delivery will change very little. It's more around the assessment methods, the assessment approach, and the coding and numbering and the way that the qualification is broken down that has changed. So we don't expect there'll be a great deal of work for centres to make those amendments. Yeah, we've got a question asking us about keeping centres updated on the progress of the new level 4. Yes, certainly. It's at the very early stages. There's a lot of work required to get the content right to meet the needs of industry, the needs of the industry partners. We'll be working with them very closely to get the content right. We will then be liaising with providers to see how best we can produce it to support you in delivering it, and also think about the learner at the end of it and what they will get as an outcome for it. So there's a lot of work to be done to get it right, and we will need your input into that at various stages. So that'll be an opportunity for you all to have a look at where we're up to with it, and when we're at a point of producing it and making it available for centres to deliver, we'll be doing networks and probably another webinar. Yes, centres who are currently delivering 23945 will get automatic approval. You will have to notify a local office in your EQA of your intention to run the new qualification so it can be added to your suite of qualifications.
But any centres that are currently running 2394 and 2394 will be given automatic approval. So that will, as David just pointed out there, you'll have to just contact your local office and you'll then see that in your wall garden basket.
Okay, if candidates have done the 2365 level 3 with no industry experience, then should they do the 2392 first before doing the 239152? Well, I suspect they will be lacking experience, possibly, and that sounds like a good group. Peter, would you?
Well, I would say actually that the 2392 is quite equivalent, really, to the practical testing that they do in 2365 at level 3. So it depends on the candidate, and I think the confidence of the candidate rather than their competency level. When they've done the 2365 and they've fully completed that inspection and test at level 3, it is pretty much equivalent to 2392. So I would say that they're probably ready to sit the 2391. I would say 50 initially. I'm concerned with the 52 or the 51 because I think, as a lot of you would agree with me, periodic inspection and testing takes experience. There is a lot more to it to identify risks and hazards with these existing installations, and that's something that comes with experience. Whilst we can't stop candidates from registering onto the 51 or 52 if they haven't got experience, I wouldn't recommend it. But I would recommend that the 50 is more adequate for their needs.
Okay, we've got another bit of feedback really that all the passwords work. So somebody's already accessed the passwords and they work. So that's good to know. Thank you very much. How will the session recording be made available? We are recording this webinar. It normally takes the software around a day to create it as a product. We can then download it as a file, and we will probably make this available through our website, probably on the landing page. So that may take some time for that software to be updated, sent to us, and then ask our internal teams to make it available. So hopefully within a week it'll be available, but please be patient just in case.
So 4.4, just a question that's come up here, is the suite of level 4 qualifications intended to replace the level 4 high professional diploma that we've currently got, which is the 4467? 4467 is a more generic building services engineering qualification. The product that we will be developing will be a more C-course electrical focused qualification, which will be supported by our industry partners such as the ECA, the JIB, the IET. We'll also have a number of key employers and employers from around the country involved in scoping out of the actual product. So when we are at that stage, we'll try and understand exactly what electrical biases the industry actually need. What is the step required from a learner that's completed these new suite of qualifications at level 3, or indeed the new apprenticeship framework at level 3? What is the step change that they will need to go on and progress at level 4 and beyond? So that's something that we will be looking at, and hopefully that C course, whilst we'll be developing it, should hopefully deliver just that.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. I'm just typing out a response as Liam's discussing it. Apologies if my spelling isn't correct on the response. I'm doing it quite quickly. Yeah, the higher professional diploma is more academic focused. We expect the new C course equivalent to be more focused on electrical. And as that content comes in from the industry partners and industry, we will have a better idea about how that looks. And we'll probably be able to answer that question a little bit better when we have more content. So as it stands at the moment, we do expect this to be more focused purely on electricians.
I think if I can jump in as well and say that I think it's very encouraging to get a lot of responses on the level 4 qualifications here, and it certainly does give us a lot more emphasis to get going with this and develop it. But this is a 2391 webinar, so please, if we can keep questions to the level 4 perhaps for another time. We are, like, as we said, we're recording this, so we're taking all these questions in. We've got some names here as well, obviously linked to those questions, so we can see the interest. But if anybody is interested in involved in consultation for the level 4, or if you want some input into what you consider to be suitable areas, then you have on these slides all our email addresses. So please, send us your thoughts on that. I can see it's obviously looking to be a very popular qualification, but are there any further questions on 2391 and on this qualification?
There's just one there, Peter.
Okay, does 239150 and 239151 have a common unit such as the 2394 and 95? Very simply, no. They are just standalone multiple choice tests. So if somebody is doing a 239150 and they want to do a 239151 later on, it is, I'm afraid, just another multiple choice test and another assessment, just like it really is with the 2394 and 95 now. But I do really I anticipate that most candidates will come in and do the combined, which again simplifies things because it will just be one multiple choice assessment covering both disciplines.
Okay, there's several other questions around the level 4, which I'm going to type out responses, and I'll let Peter just respond to the 2391 questions, which seem to be coming to an end now. So we'll just take a couple more minutes. If you've got any further questions to ask, please do so. If not, if you're comfortable with that, you may think of some questions in the following few hours or days. That's fine. You've got all our email addresses and feedback email address, so please do make use of those and continue to ask questions and engage with us that way.
Okay, so I think we're coming to a close. It seems that we've answered all the questions. And once again, also thank you as well for the many comments that are coming in saying that they've enjoyed the presentation. That's good for us. This is a good tool for communicating updates rather than ourselves or yourselves having to travel to networks. So yeah, keep an eye out on your email alerts. Make sure you sign up for email alerts because we do like to send a lot of information out and convey information using these webinars. So thank you for all the kind comments there. If there are any further questions, perhaps you could email them to either Rob or David or even myself. If it really Rob and David, more for the product. If it's technical, then that would be myself. But yeah, happy to accept any emails if you've got any further questions following this presentation. Just one more last check. We're just making sure that there are no other questions.
Okay, what we can actually do is we can complete the webinar now. We'll stop answering many of the questions verbally. If some questions continue to come in, we will type responses. So we'll keep the webinar rolling, but we will start answering verbally because we think we've probably answered most of them that are up there now. But yeah, we will continue to stay online and type out answers as we go. So yeah, once again, thank you very much for your time. We really do appreciate it. We know that you're very busy and hopefully it's been of value and you've learned from this webinar, and we look forward to see you all again very soon. So thank you from me, David Pye.
And me, Peter Tanner.
And me, Salim Bisram. Thank you very much again for your time.
Thank you. Bye.